This video is about our culture. You'll see us being more intentional about sharing our core values. Why is culture important? Because it binds us together. By together, I mean Mercury, Pivot, and Shippers. Our values are what set us apart from our competitors. Our values are why customers come to love us. Our values are how you can tell if you fit in here. Yes, our company goal is to make more money now and in the future. There are lots of ways to earn money, though. These values guide us in our way, to our way, and on our way. If you aren't ready to believe in them and accept them, we'll give you time. But they are not optional. They are how we roll. Our values are in a particular order. They sort of build on each other. You'll see what I mean. I'll go through each one. But first, each one is what we call a one-liner. A one-liner is a simple phrase you can say that transfers a ton of shared meaning. At the moment, we have 30 documented one-liners. They're out in Teams under Files in a one-liner folder. Look them over if you're interested. Here's how you use them. You notice anybody, up to and including me, exhibiting the wrong behavior, and you should say the one-liner. It's not impolite. You do it to help somebody break a bad habit. One-liners are particularly useful when the habit is natural and breaking it is counterintuitive. Which of us needs our bad habits? And yet they're so hard to change, even after deciding to do so. As Oscar Wilde wrote in his book, The Picture of Dorian Gray, and I quote, "But then one regrets the loss of even one's worst habits. Perhaps one regrets them the most. They're such an essential part of one's personality." Let's hope Oscar's wrong, and that we don't have some sick need to cling on to our decisions that hurt ourselves and others. Still, it takes time to replace a bad habit. Why? Because of something that's called by the long name of neuroplasticity. It comes from neuro, meaning the nerve, and plasticity, which is the property of a solid body, whereby it undergoes a permanent change in shape or size when subjected to enough stress. Can you tell I looked it up? In our brains, we have synapses between nerves where a spark literally has to jump tick, 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 tick across a potential for us to think that way. However, the pathways we use a lot actually grow together, making it much easier to think along that pathway the next time. It's the literal path of least resistance. Consequently, it's hard to break a habit because these habits are literally hardwired inside our skulls. Building a new habit requires building a new connection, which means letting the old hardwire one separate back into synapses. So tick, 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 I'm thinking the new way, it's hard, it gets easier, finally it grows together again, and then the old way parts. And in order to think the old way now, tick, tick, tick is necessary across the potential to do the regular thinking. So what I'm saying is that changing your mind, literally changing your mind, requires emotion and time. That takes effort, which is time multiplied by emotion. Think about it. You're a little baby and you put your hand on the stove. It burns your hand. Ow! Emotion! Bang! You've got a new connection. You never put your hand on the stove again. So at work, the difficulty is that we tend to lack the type of emotion that you had when you were a baby and you put your hand on that stove. So what we're trying to do now then is to practice these one-liners or gain the emotion, just build ourselves up the emotion to actually make the change. Let me go on to each of these core values so you get out of this theoretical discussion. It's way better than a long lecture. We'll talk about the specific core values one at a time. Here we go. One-liner number 9, do right. Human beings accomplish so much through collaboration, but individually, we are all well aware we're far from perfect. So acting like we're good is the target here. Everybody knows what it means. Do right. I used to have 10 core values. Do right was not one of them. Years ago, I had a manager who had been doing a great job for the company. But one day I found out that he had made his sexual urges explicit to one of his direct reports. I investigated. There were more examples, and nobody had said anything to me. I waited for him to return to the office and fired him on the spot. I was so outraged. I stomped back into my office and added "do right" to the top of the core values list. I reprinted it and put the new version in the frame that was hanging on the wall. Since then, the number of our core values has diminished, but "do right" is still on top. One-liner number 3, be 100% responsible. It makes no sense to be 95% responsible or any percentage smaller than 100%. Why would you give your power away to someone else? No. Anytime you give away your responsibility, eventually you won't like the outcome. The other person can't be perfect at looking out for you, not even your mommy. It leads to blame. And when a person is blamed, what do? They justify why they were right. The first person doesn't appreciate the justification and blames some more. This is human nature. Professor Jerry Harvey, may he rest in peace, wrote a wonderful short story. It was produced into a little movie. It was called The Abilene Paradox, the management of agreement. And it takes place before air conditioning became commonplace in homes and cars. On a hot afternoon visiting in Coleman, Texas, the family is comfortably playing dominoes on the porch until the father-in-law suggests that they take a trip to Abilene, 53 miles north, for dinner. The wife says, "Sounds like a great idea." The husband, despite having reservations because the drive is long and hot, thinks that his preferences must be out of step with the group, so he says, "Sounds good to me. I just hope your mother wants to go." The mother-in-law then says, "Of course I want to go. I haven't been to Abilene in a long time." The drive is hot, dusty, and long. When they arrive at the cafeteria, the food is as bad as the drive. They arrive back home 4 hours later, exhausted, encrusted with dirt and sweat. One of them dishonestly says, "It was a great trip, wasn't it?" The mother-in-law says that actually she would rather have stayed home, but went along since the other three were so enthusiastic. The husband says, "I was delighted to keep doing what we were doing. I only went to satisfy the rest of you." The wife says, "I just went along to keep you happy. I would have had to be crazy to want to go out in heat like that." The father-in-law then says that he only suggested it because he thought the others might be bored. The group sits back perplexed that they together decided to take a trip which none of them wanted. Each would have preferred sitting comfortably in the shade, sipping iced tea and playing dominoes. But none of them said that when they still had time to enjoy the afternoon. Taking 100% responsibility means banning the blame justification cycle. It means 100% responsibility for yourself and to others. What are the implications? Who are the characters in a comic book? There are only 3 types. Villains make the mistake of looking out for themselves at the expense of their responsibility to others. They forget that do right part. Fortunately, there aren't many villains. But there are lots of victims. Don't be a victim. Victims give away their responsibility, even push it on others. They're never happy and rely on blame. That's no way to live. Be 100% responsible and give up your victimhood. Professor Harvey wrote another book too. It has a longer title. Every time I get stabbed in the back, my fingerprints are on the knife. Being 100% responsible means owning your part in doing what you can do. After all, you may not be able to change what somebody else does to you, but you can sure change what you do, and that affects what other people do. For example, the fastest way to get somebody to trust you is to trust them. If it isn't fair because what frequently happens to you doesn't happen to someone else, think about where you might find your own fingerprints. Perhaps the worst of all are heroes. They mean well, they have the best intentions, but they enable victims. And there are lots of victims. When we make it too easy on our children, they can become too weak to take care of themselves. They call it failure to launch, I think. Fortunately, there aren't too many heroes except in comic books and on most modern movies and TV, which are based on comic books. Let people own their responsibilities. Let them make their own choices. Let them be real people, not characters in a saga. Be real. Hey everybody, welcome to the newly improved one-liner number 27. Choose a growth mindset. According to Stanford professor Carol Dweck, PhD, most people naturally develop two mindsets, a fixed and a growth mindset. Which one you have at any given time depends on how you choose to feel. If you're using your fixed mindset, for the moment you're believing, you're limited. And here are a couple of consequences. Why go to the trouble with a major challenge? There's nothing to gain and everything to lose. What if you screw up totally? And also, since you're only what you are, being persistent is just a way to wear yourself out. Together, you begin to feel threatened. So what's your goal? To maintain what you have. But with a growth mindset, the base assumption is that you can not only improve, but you can actually become permanently smarter. If so, you want to learn and you actually want it to be tough. You want it to be tough. The desirable effect that stems from that is you like hard work, which leads to having a goal of higher achievements. At Shippers, we want folks with a growth mindset for obvious reasons. If you're not there yet or not always there, we'll work together to make you smarter. How about that? Core value number 27, choose a growth mindset. One-liner number 26, listen, speak up, and challenge the status quo. Order matters here. Attacking the status quo without first speaking is like putting the cart before the horse. It's unlikely to get much done. The old adage, first seek to understand before you seek to be understood, guides us to finish the order. Listening helps you better understand what you want to talk about. I've heard it said that you have two ears and one mouth. You should use them in that proportion. Good idea. Speaking up is necessary to share ideas and suggestions. Challenging the status quo is required if we want to improve, not be mired in stagnation. If it was good enough for your grandfather and your father, it probably isn't good enough for us now. This one-liner provokes the idea to change. Lead with content is how we make the change. That about wraps up our core values. Thanks for paying attention to this video. Together we can make a stronger company and a better world. As a little teaser, perhaps this will be content for a future company meeting. I've been thinking about how to migrate away from our many different names. You all know that Kentucky Fried Chicken bought Long John Silver's and Taco Bell, and fish and tacos are not exactly chicken, right? So they changed their name first to KFC and then to Yum Brands. The direction I'm working on for us is to emphasize SSCo more. Maybe it becomes Shippers Solutions Company. See if you like that. As we offer more services like ESP Plus and the opportunity for companies to outsource their operations to us, this might make pretty good sense. Anyway, I think it's what we do now. Thanks a lot again.